Once again, very good afternoon to each one of you. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we welcome each one of you to this special talk on road map ahead for COVID-19 vaccination. This session is being organized under the aegis of the Pharma and Healthcare Expert Committee, BCIC. We would like to specially thank Mr. Praveen Iyer, Chairman of the Pharma and Healthcare Expert Committee of BCIC and Managing Director of Relicare Tech Services Private Limited. And also, we'd like to specially thank Mr. Devesh Agrawal, our immediate past president and Managing Director of Jason Technology, to facilitate this session for the benefit of our members for curating this session. Today's session will be addressed by Mr. Gagandeep Singh Bedi, Country President and Managing Director of AstraZeneca Pharma India Private Limited. The session will be moderated by Mr. Praveen Iyer, Chairman of Pharma and Healthcare Expert Committee. On behalf of the BCIC, we express our sincere thanks to Mr. Gagandeep Singh Bedi for accepting our invitation to address on this important subject. We would also like to thank all the participants for joining today's important subject session. We request all of you to kindly mute your mic and webcam option. This will enhance and keep the bandwidth strong as well as avoid any disturbance in the background. And if need be any questions, we could raise your hand. We will be able to answer your query. And also request you to post your questions in the chat box only. And the speaker will respond to the questions during the session. And in case time do not permit, we shall be sharing the queries to the speaker and shall revert back to you accordingly. May I now invite our president, Mr. T.R. Parshuram, the whole-time director and president of Toyota Engines plant, to kindly do the welcome address. Over to you, President, sir.
Thanks, Prithvi. Very good evening to all of you. I have a very great pleasure and privilege to welcome our honorable guest for the day, Mr. Gagan Singh, Country President and Managing Director of AstraZeneca Pharma India Limited. Thank you very much, Mr. Singh, for accepting our invitation and addressing the members of the Bangalore Chambers. I would like to thank our immediate past president, Mr. Devesh Agrawal, who connected us to Mr. Gagan Singh. Thanks, Devesh. In fact, today, one of the hottest topics the country can think of is the vaccination. In fact, we have gone through the wave 1, wave 2. Some parts of the world is already undergoing wave 3 and wave 4. So we don't know how many waves are still remaining. But all we know that there is a solution for this. And that's why the vaccination, which has become a very, very hot topic. In fact, vaccination normally is an ignored topic in a country like India because we don't take it very seriously. But now we understand the importance of vaccination and how critical it is to save millions of lives. And unfortunately, there is a huge shortage of vaccination in this country. Every day we open the papers, we see the kind of shortages. And yesterday we are hearing United States has come to support us in this big way. Like that, new vaccinations on the cards, validations, again, how to ramp up the capacity of these vaccinations. I'm told country like India, we have a total capacity of vaccinations close to 900 crores. Mr. Gagan Singh may correct me. Even 10% of it is utilized for making the COVID vaccine. I always, dream that we should be able to quickly ramp up. But the life is not so easy. Several challenges, the throughput time. I'm told it takes 2 to 3 months to, for the vaccine to come out of the plant. And of course, before that, series of validation processes. Therefore, today we are very, very pleased once again to welcome our honorable speaker for the day, Mr. Gagan Singh, once again. I would like to briefly introduce Mr. Gagan Singh. He is a country president and managing director, responsible for driving AstraZeneca's science-led strategy in India. Mr. Gagan started his journey in AstraZeneca in 2006 and held initial roles as a business director and later as director of strategic planning. Thereafter, he was promoted to the role of vice president, sales and marketing, cardiac and diabetes. In the year 2012, he was appointed as the country president for AstraZeneca Philippines. Past a successful stint in this role, he moved to the United Kingdom as global head of the established brands GA and CV. Prior to the AstraZeneca, Gagan has worked with Baxter India and Eli Lilly, Gagan holds a degree in economics from University of Delhi. So I think thank you once again, Mr. Gagan Singh, for your time and willingness to address our chambers. So once again, I extend him a very hearty welcome. I'm sure you will have a great takeaways today. Over to you, Mr. Gagan.
Thank you, sir. May I now invite Mr. Praveen Iyer to just set the context for today's subject and also moderate the session. Praveen Iyer, over to you, sir. Let us hear from you.
Yeah, thank you, Prithvi, and thank you, President Sir. Good afternoon to all the colleagues and members who have joined this session. On behalf of BCIC Healthcare and Pharmaceutical Committee, it is my pleasure to introduce today's session, Roadmap Ahead for COVID-19 Vaccination. As we speak today, the government of Karnataka has extended the lockdown in Karnataka until 15th of June, and we are in the 4th week. The impact of this lockdown on the business and livelihood is an untold mystery. The only way out of such frequent disruption to lives and livelihood is complete vaccination of the population. We started well in India on the vaccination, but in the last few months, we have completely lost all momentum. The availability of vaccine is a big question mark, and the more disturbing fact is the quantum of vaccines and also the assurances coming from the government at different levels are so confusing, and they don't seem to tally to the ground realities. It is a sad paradox that India is the largest manufacturer of vaccines in the world, but today we are struggling to vaccinate our own people. To declutter this sordid story of this vaccination and provide us clarity on the subject, we are extremely happy and have the great pleasure of having among us Mr. Gagan Singh, Country President and MD of AstraZeneca. And more important, the star Covishield vaccine manufacturer, a lifesaver for all Indians. I would request Mr. Gagan Singh to enlighten us on the present situation of the vaccination in general, and if possible, Covishield in particular, and the roadmap of vaccination ahead. Once again, a very warm welcome to Mr. Gagan Singh. Hope to have a great session with you. Over to you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable President. Thank you, Praveen ji, for the very kind words. And thank you, Devesh, for giving me this opportunity. With your permission, can I display a deck which I've prepared, short one, which...
Sure.
Thank you. Just give me a moment as it gets uploaded.
Oh, yes. Journey. Thank you.
Can you all see it?
Yes.
Yes, we can see. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. What I'll do is probably next 10 to 15 minutes, just walk you through our journey, what we went through in the past 1 year, and then open the forum for questions. A lot of your questions around roadmap ahead is something which is not linear, can't be put on a deck because every day, the disease is throwing up new challenges. So are responses from pharma industry, from government, and other healthcare stakeholders to try and measure up to the challenge of the disease. And hence, that's let's leave it for a more conversational play as well. But very quickly, just sharing with you that at AstraZeneca, we're committed to providing broad and equitable access to COVID-19 vaccine. So far, we've developed a supply capacity for billions of doses currently, and our strategic approach has focused on partnering with scientists, governments, international organizations, as well as manufacturers to establish agreements for supplying and distribution of the vaccine across the world. And we're working tirelessly towards this goal, of broad, timely, and equitable access to the vaccine. Yeah. And our strategic approach is focused on partnering with scientists, governments, international organizations, manufacturers to establish agreements for the development, supply, as well as distribution of vaccine. And we're working towards this goal with an unstinted approach of making sure that we have an equitable access not only in West but all across. We entered into an exclusive license agreement with University of Oxford for global rights to this vaccine, and the partnership is unprecedented, and it was negotiated in less than 10 days as an urgent response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Uh, just allow me to share with you the genetic code of the coronavirus surface proteins, and I'm sure a lot of us have heard this before. The spike protein is inserted now into a modified common cold virus, an adenovirus, and that is why these are called as adenovector vaccines. An adenovirus has been genetically altered, removing the genetic code that would normally allow it to replicate. This modified cold virus essentially acts as a carrier of the spike protein. And after vaccination, the surface spike protein is produced in the body cell, priming the immune system to attack the virus if it infests the body. Viral vector vaccines have been tested in clinical research for many years for Ebola, MERS, malaria, tuberculosis. So we have them across the spectrum of diseases, and viral vector drugs have been, vaccines have been used. And of course, you've got, on the other hand, mRNA vaccines. So these are the broad two groups of vaccines which have been approved. AstraZeneca, J&J would fall under the viral vector, while Moderna and Pfizer, as we all know, is more mRNA, which is a newer age technology as well. Having said that, viral vector comes with its own advantages of of ease of distribution because of the storage conditions being much simpler. I won't walk you through this, but the timeline for the development of this vaccine was remarkable. As I said, we signed an agreement in 10 days, and then we proceeded to really do one of the largest potential, random clinical trial all across, make sure that, this vaccine is available across the world. But really, this is unprecedented in history, not only just for us, but I think all the vaccine manufacturers who've delivered in such a short period of time. I think what is really important is not only just the efficacy in random clinical trial, because this is one vaccine or a drug which is probably going to have the largest exposure to people in a shortest possible period of time. And therefore, in real world studies, what they found out, the COVID-19 vaccine substantially reduced the risk of hospitalization by 94% after the first dose, which is a very, very big relief. As you know, mortality is significant with this disease. And with comparable vaccine effects seen across all age groups, including those over 80 years. This was real world evidence out of a paper out of Scotland. Yet again demonstrated 73% effectiveness from 35 days after the first dose in those aged over 70 years and older, and demonstrated 81% effectiveness in hospitalization of elderly and substantially reduced that risk. So it's been a remarkable development, and a development which in real world is continuing to show significant protection for people. And I'm sure some of your questions are regarding the variants which came up. And as you can see, whether it is the Kent variant which came up in UK, or the Brazilian or the South African, which were dreaded, clearly there seems to be very strong efficacy across these. Of course, the bigger question right now is what happens against the Indian variant. Here again, some real world evidence out of UK is showing there seems to be very, very significant efficacy both for AstraZeneca and the Pfizer vaccine. In addition to that, ICMR firmly believes and is conducting studies to see how does it do. But given the antibody load that the vaccine generates, they were pretty confident that against the Indian variant as well, we'll see strengths. We didn't stop ourselves like most of our industry peers as well at the vaccine. We're looking at, targeting prevention and treatment both. So whether it's repurposing our existing drugs to see what can work, and some of them you've already seen have been launched into the market, like tocilizumab and others, which largely work on the thesis of cytokine storm, which happens in patients who are severely sick and hospitalized. But along with that, we're very confident of bringing out a long-acting antibody combination. This is one of those combinations which the readout will be towards the end of this month. We're anticipating positive results here. Now, here again, interestingly, this is also not only tested for prophylaxis, but also post-prophylaxis for people who've been exposed. And currently, trials are ongoing even for patients who are severely sick, where the readout is in Q4. So a very wide spectrum of long-acting antibody, some of it that we can work. Some of them have already hit the market, be it from Eli Lilly or be it from Roche as well. Unparalleled response to secure and establish global supplies. We've had the supply chains are supported by an analytical testing network with more than 24 sites which are doing this globally. And as we're all aware, it's quite a complicated vaccine production as well as supply or chain that one needs to take into account. And the vaccine produced from any supply chain is dedicated to relevant countries or regions in our case. So we do have our partners in Serum Institute, where last year, similar time, we did the tech transfer, and and given their outstanding available vaccine capacities, this was one of the most important agreements we signed. But apart from this, we've had on-ground agreements in Korea, Russia, Brazil, to make sure that we have widely available vaccine. And that is essentially for an equitable access, which, at no profit. And currently, our goal is to get it to over 165 countries. We're at present at about 130 countries which have access to this. Please remember the COVAX alliance, which was formed with CEPI in June last year and decided to support the lower middle income countries. And Gates Foundation also stepped in there, has 98% supplies from AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca vaccine, or Covishield as we know it in India, is the most widest used vaccine globally. Right now, close to about 400 million doses have been used globally. And of course, India is a very, very significant chunk of it. We continue to look forward to supporting not only in India, but other low middle income countries as well as other parts of the world with our vaccine. Thank you so very much. That was a very, very short tour of our journey for the past 1 year. And like I was telling the president before I got on, a lot of us are living a full decade in a year, as you can imagine. But very happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gagan Singh. That was a very crisp and short and sweet presentation. We will have questions coming up. Prithvi, can you take it up? You can see the questions at the chat box, please.
Mr. Devesh has got a question. Devesh Agrawal, please. He has raised the hand.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Devesh. You go ahead with your question, please.
Gagan, thank you for the presentation. Firstly, I was not being charitable. You really are an impressive person. So I was going to ask you, what would be your advice for industry? Because what we are seeing is that the corona family of virus is a virus that mutates, and it is going to continue to change. Going forward, what does industry have to plan for? We are talking third wave, there'll be possibly a fourth wave or a fifth wave. What all does industry need to plan for, number one? Number two, from a vaccination or a vaccine producer standpoint, do you see the world population having to take booster shots in, say, like how we have the flu virus every year? Around November, people start taking the flu virus for the winter season and to prevent, this thing. So do you see something similar happening?
Sure. And I must put Deveshji, a disclaimer here that some of it may be my thoughts because the science is still evolving and I need to be extremely careful when I talk through the lens of future. But I think, first of all, to first part of your question, what should the industry do? I think getting people vaccinated and continuing to practice the COVID safety norms is going to be absolutely critical even going forward. Yeah. Again, this is our internal view. It's hard to see a world coming back to normal, at least in the next couple of years. That we are back to where we were, and the usage in offices and the distance in offices reducing to what it was originally at a per square foot basis. That seems to be really, really difficult to envisage. To the second part of your question on what would the impact on industry be, and I think very clearly our cost structures will get redefined. We're beginning to see that already. And one of the oft-quoted examples is, the 9/11 incident and how it changed the way security around us has changed and how it was built in as part of our cost structures. So I think that's an element which, as leaders, we need to be conscious about, that if we are looking at redefining workspaces, redefining factories, working through this, we need to redefine our cost structures as well, and that it will have an implication to the end consumer and competitiveness. I think the other aspect which is extremely important also is which you raised, that will there be a booster dose about it? Well, if you look at it from a flu, like you mentioned, yes, at the end of the day, this belongs to the similar family as well. Therefore, you would continue to expect it. Currently, this is undergoing trials right now. And what I know initially is that potentially the readout should happen over the summer. And we'll get to hear how does the third dose really help in boosting the immunity. But yes, like I said, with a disclaimer, my knowledge, my understanding is limited. Yes, it'll be required.
We have a President, Mr. Parshuram, question. President, sir, it's over to you, sir.
Thanks, Gaganji, for a wonderful overview and interesting details about the vaccine. So my question to you is, now we have a lot of, understanding problems with regard to, we say after the first vaccine, the probability of getting infected is around, 0.8%, and second vaccine around 0.04%. Can you just explain to us in real, in a layman's language, what exactly it means and, what kind of chances are there after the first and second vaccine? And even if it happens, people say the effect is very, very minuscule after the first vaccine, and second vaccine after 14 days, you get antibodies and so on. So can you just throw some little more light on this aspects?
No, very important question. I think a lot of anecdotal information continues to build in our mind around vaccines. And I'll be more generic here, not just about specific to AstraZeneca, but what the data shown both in random clinical trials as well as real world evidence is that you virtually have zero hospitalizations post vaccination. So whether it is dose one, even after dose one, and also after dose two. Of course, it's a very, very, very small as compared to the real world evidence. When we did the random clinical trial, we were talking about 30,000 people, and here it's been used, in millions. So we need to be very conscious about the fact that there could be some element of data. But I'll again come back to a couple of pointers that I have picked up, closer to India, where, as an example, one of the and it's a good example to see. One of the things which is going around the Twitter quite a bit was initially about last month was that about 35 physicians in Gangaram have got infected with the vaccine. Now, I was like, oh, so does vaccine work? And then Gangaram did post out. I think Dr. Soin posted out a tweet giving, contextualizing the whole situation. And there he gave it. He said, you're talking about 700 healthcare workers, out of which 35 got infected. Of that, only 5 were hospitalized. And of that, there was zero mortality. Yeah. So I think we must remember that we need to see data in the right light, because a lot of times anecdotally we're building pictures because someone tells us, but when we aggregate and see the data, it does have a story to tell. The second thing, and closer home in Bangalore, I can share is Dr. Shetty from Narayan Udale, Dr. Devi Shetty has gone on record to say that he's not lost a single person in the ICU who had double doses of vaccine. There's zero mortality in his experience, and what a large facility he runs, right? So where I'm coming from is that when you really aggregate the data, you begin to see. I personally, I don't think there is any way than just standing.
Gentlemen, can you please mute? I think some disturbance seems.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, can you please mute your mics?
And one of the things we're also picking up is, remember, we're still tracking these people who went through a random clinical trial, and this whole random clinical trial people that we're tracking, we're seeing that their antibodies are getting stronger and stronger as the day passes. And that's true about any vaccine. That's true about Pfizer. That's true about this. So when you'll start seeing, my guess is when you start seeing the booster dose data, you'll really be surprised. You'll look at efficacies which are really unheard of, going through the roof. So as you get vaccinated and as time passes, you're going to see stronger and stronger buildup of the antibodies till a certain point, and then of course maybe you'll require a booster there. So I hope that kind of contextualizes, how safe these vaccines are as well as how efficacious they are. Another point maybe it'll be good to touch upon here is a lot of times I'm asked, what about the side effects, the blood clot thing which hit up, or you see the endomyocardial infarct, which is or infection, which is being discussed for Pfizer vaccine in Israel as an example. Now, one of the things we got to contextualize is that the last time we looked at the data, it was 4 people out of 1 million who may develop blood clots. And they were also seen as people who had low blood platelet count. But now you put it in context with COVID, you have almost 6 to 7% of people who do develop blood clot. So now when you put a risk and benefit analysis, it kind of contextualizes for you what risk you are putting by not undergoing vaccine, even on something like a blood clot, as an example.
When you say 0.04%, Dr. Gagan Singh, means does it mean that 4 out of 10,000 people can potentially get the COVID after vaccination? Second dose.
Look, when we say the efficacy is depending on which vaccine you're using, can range between 80 to 95%, and depending on the gap you've had. So if you use random clinical trial data, then even 1 in 5 can get. But that 0.4% that you're referring to is all about more severe or more sick people that who can get it. Though in the random clinical trial, the hospitalization was 0. But in real world, of course, when you start using in millions, there'll be a few hospitalization cases. Mortality was 0.
I see. Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.
Parasu, I asked one question, Parasu. I have only one.
Please, Shekhar, please.
Please, please.
Before I log off, sir, thank you so much for your detailed presentation. Only one point I have said, as Praveen has started, that India is a surplus vaccine country, but considering there is a shortage of vaccines everywhere, it is getting reported, and we have a huge gap between the vaccination requirement and the medicines available going by what is there in the public domain. So I would like to understand from you, sir, 2 points. Why such a gap when we are a vaccine supply country? What is the reason, number one? And what should we do to make sure that the government ambitious program of 70% vaccination complete by 31st December? I do not know whether it is practically possible, but if it is possible, I'll be the happiest person. But what should we do to achieve that ambitious plan, sir?
Yeah. So I think the positive is government has committed, and we're all working very closely with the government to see that by 31st of December, we do have access of vaccine to everybody. Now, so coming to your point on, while, and these numbers get thrown that, what is the level of capacity we have and others. One of the things we got to remember is that it's a very complicated process. It's not like a drug, which is, a formulation making versus a biologic like vaccine is a far more complicated. I'll spare the details here, but where I'll really come back and share is that it required, for example, for AstraZeneca, it required a complex tech transfer to Serum Institute, which took over 3 to 4 months. And, post that, the number of validations and trials to make sure, that the drug is absolutely to the standard that has been promised in the clinical trials is ensured is something which takes a long period of time. And I'm sure some of you have covered that in media as well as Ella from Bharat Biotech has spoken about how validation with ICMR takes about 3 months, and that's the reality of it. Now, the other bit of question is twofold. One is, can AstraZeneca license it to more people? And especially when you're doing it not for profit, that question continues to be asked, or other companies also utilize these capacities. I can't speak for other companies, but I can talk about this, that every time we have to license someone and involve in a complex 3 to 4 months of tech transfer, we're taking resources away from what we're manufacturing. We ourselves are have a billion plus capacity and are working very hard to supply to EU, UK, and other countries. So that's the other complication which all of us as manufacturers. I think the other potential bit is that when you start looking at, there is a certain level of raw material which is available, and never in the history of vaccines or drugs have been so much of raw material required in such a short period of time. Therefore, even if you create more capacities, let's assume for a moment with all the tech transfers from all the companies, it is absolutely impossible to lay your hands on that raw material till, in the background, that doesn't get ramped up. And some of you saw that Indian government had to approach, the US government for support in terms of continued supply chain on vaccines. So given that as a context, you're facing the difficulties that you're facing, but I can all say this because I've worked with quite a number of countries, including through COVAX, that India is still in a fortunate space. There have been countries with large populations like Indonesia with very limited supply. We've just not been able to ramp up to their demands. So India is still in a sweet spot. And I think if you give it another 3 to 4 months, and as you know, we're a vast country, but if our economic activity still is restricted to big cities, we should be able to cover them up, in my view, by Q3 itself. And therefore, that should play a very big factor in the economic revival while we get into the hinterland and distribute vaccines later from that.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot. It's great to hear to you. As I said, I'm sorry I'm logging off because I have other call. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot. I would like to catch up with you separately, Mr. Gagan.
Thank you. Look forward.
Thank you, Shekhar sir. Praveen sir, can we go with the chat box questions?
Okay.
Yeah. This is from Raju Bhatnagar. There are two questions. What are your thoughts about providing a waiver for public liability for vaccine manufacturers like Pfizer? Question number two. Why cannot the same waiver be extended to other manufacturers like Serum Institute or Bharat Bio?
That would be my ask as well to the government. But look, again, the Pfizer stated position is remember, a lot of people do not realize, but FDA has still not approved the vaccine. Yeah. So it is still under emergency use. A lot of our vaccines are under emergency use. And that is where, which is essentially saying that we haven't done enough and more clinical trials, which we would do in a normal scenario if we are building a vaccine for, let's say, a flu or other kind of things. And therefore, right now, given that we've hastened this process and governments have allowed emergency usage of this, can indemnification be given? I think the large bit of question is that we need to have a level playing field, and our request to the government is pretty similar, like you mentioned.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Ravi Chandran. As per the current estimate, how long does the COVID-19 wave prevail globally? Will it continue for another 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I sincerely hope so. But last time when I did hear a few experts, and I was on a panel with an NHS expert from Oxford, his personal view is, 2 to 3 years, given what variants we have, given the large population of the world we have. Remember, the vaccine requires hosts. Like, a lot of times we hear the situation where we're now discussing about third wave and third wave impacting children because they aren't going to be covered with vaccine. And that's one of the reasons why you see this occur. So I personally think, I would go with the expert view that one should be prepared in his business plans for at least next 2 years.
Thank you.
Prithvi, just
sir.
one question from me.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Dr. Singh, this burning question in the minds of all of us, the Delta and the Kappa, which is the Indian variant name, has the AstraZeneca vaccine been clinically tested on these variants, and how effective they have found this?
Yeah, like I said, ICMR is conducting right now. So that's something which should, the readout should happen very, very recently. But again, I go back to relying on the recent history. I just showed you 3 variants in my deck as well. The UK variant, Brazil variant, South African. And if you remember, a lot of discussion happened around how virulent the South African variant was, whether it will be covered. So the recent history is telling us that most of these variants do react. Of course, they can have different efficacies. A vaccine may have different efficacies against these variants, but by and large, they get covered. The first real world evidence which UK has published clearly shows that after dose 1 and dose 2 for AstraZeneca, over 65-70% of efficacy, and with Pfizer over 80%. Now, this is pretty early data, so don't hold on to the numbers because sometimes these are real world evidences. You don't know when did the person really take a jab, because as I said, there's a play here where you take a jab and then over a period of time, you'll see more efficacy, which happens. But right now, we haven't seen our all-cause mortality data drastically change because of any variant. Yeah, so fingers crossed, more data should emerge in June, and it should be positive.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah. The other question is, what could be the tentative time if effective vaccine after second vaccination?
So you're saying the vaccination gap, correct?
Yeah, vaccination gap, exactly.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think the session won't have been complete without this question, I guess. Very important one. So look, if you look at what the data from WHO has said, it's 8 to 12 weeks. UK has also maintained that. And why I'm quoting UK is because they started with vaccination, which we're discussing, Covishield or AstraZeneca, way ahead of time. They also recommend similar. ICMR has analyzed the serum data. They did conduct a vast clinical trial in India, and it is 12 weeks. Our own, it was more when we were doing the random clinical trial, this was more serendipity to us because we went with a 4 week gap and we realized that the efficacy after 12 weeks was much better. And then we reconducted and added that arm, strengthened that arm to collect more data to find that after 8 to 12 weeks, you really see significant this thing. So government's advice 12 to 16 weeks. I know a lot of media will tell you that this is because of shortages or others, but I can tell you these decisions are based on absolute data which is available either through global clinical trials or the Indian clinical trials.
Thank you, Ron. Next is from the Bhushan Joshi. Is there a plan for clinical study crisis across vaccination? That is one dose of one vaccine and second dose of other vaccine. By Astra, the number of is huge for vaccination for supply availability. So the question is one vaccination, other is second vaccination of a different company, maybe.
Yeah, and that's been our ask to the government to really, fast track some of these trials and give approvals based on, even if not in India, clinical trials. I mean, as an example, we ourselves are looking at AZ dose 1, Sputnik dose 2, Sputnik dose 1, AZ dose 2. So some of these trials are ongoing and results should read out in the next few months. And if they allow, then that's an if the results are positive, then that's something which can really be helpful. So these are a couple of our asks from the government as well, because this will ease pressure on one single vaccine manufacturer that currently we've got, or just a couple of them if you include Bharat Biotech as well. The other bit we're constantly asking the government to work is on making sure that, from a WHO perspective, most of our vaccines get recognized. That will give more confidence to people. So once Covaxin has their phase 3 data, they can file for WHO approval, and that also will help in international travel. Otherwise, our worry is, you'll start seeing maybe vaccine discrimination, where people say, because I have to, and particularly the cohort of people we're all together here, who globally travel quite a bit, we only want certain vaccines. And again, that can put strain on the supply, particularly for the industry perspective. So these are the two significant asks we're putting across to the government.
The other one is an interesting one, sir. When the day mask off after 2 jabs going to come in India?
Look, I mean, first of all, I can only, I mean, I can't comment on what CDC is saying or what we're reading in other countries, but I think my personal experience is that mask is very helpful. And I'll give you a small anecdote here. Everywhere I went last year, people would ask me, "Oh, have you taken a jab?" I know, imagining that I would be part of the random clinical trial and take a jab for myself, and I have never denied and said, "Yeah, I've been vaccinated," and my vaccine is my mask. So I think some of us who are here, and have been able to keep COVID off will owe a lot to, social distancing and masks. And therefore, my own recommendation is we continue to practice that. We're a very large country. We don't know how many people are going to get eventually vaccinated. I know Covin's brilliant data, and some of you guys who worked on the tech part of it is outstanding. But remember, still, with so much of hesitancy in vaccine, particularly in our rural areas, we need to be very careful, very, very careful. We can't look west and implement east here.
Yeah, the next question is, how do we see the supply of vaccines? Will we be able to vaccinate the entire Indian population by year end?
Yeah, and if you ask me, we're all very, very optimistic about that scenario. As you may have just read about biological events, and it's such a fast and rapidly moving landscape that it's sometimes it's very difficult to keep pace with the changes which are happening. But yes, they are in phase 3 and they have very significant capacity. Last I knew, they had 650 million dose capacity. They're also tied up with J&J, and so J&J vaccine could be something that we may also see in quarter 3 along with Pfizer, and they have with biological advance a very large capacity. DRL has put their capacity with Sputnik in play. Serum has Novavax, now also wants to manufacture Sputnik. So we will see a multitude of vaccines which will be available across. I think the challenge would be that the urban population will get covered very quickly. How do you beat the hesitation in rural, and how does the affordability work? How do you make more affordable vaccines for the rural people to pay up? So I think that's an area which government is actively considering, because one of the lessons from this disease is that none of us is safe till all of us are safe. So we do need it, and we're very confident as manufacturers that by end of this year, most of our population will have access.
Prithvi, we have Mr. Krasta who has raised his hand. Let him ask his question.
Yeah, please. Dr. Krasta, over to you.
Yes, sir.
Dr.
Good
Krasta.
evening, sir. I'm Krasta, Managing Committee member of co-chairman of MSME in PCI. Sir, my question is, I think hardly about 2 to 5% of the population has been vaccinated. And my question to you directly, being a scientist on this, whether this vaccination is compulsory. If the proper protocol is maintained, social distancing, mask, public, wherever place you go, is it necessary that the vaccination is compulsory? But now it has been also told that any foreign tour has to be done unless and until there is a vaccination certificate, they don't allow. Is it true? These are my 2 questions to you.
I think theoretically you're right. I mean, some of us who've been able to beat it owe it to that. But the fact of life also is that we've been operating out of homes, we've been in lockdowns. So yes, theoretically, if the entire country was to follow everything, yes, it is potentially possible. But in realistic world, we haven't seen. We've seen, even island countries which completely cut them off, like Australia. Now are seeing another cluster come up. So it's very hard to say that can you live in with mask and social distancing? Can you? I think mask, social distancing plus vaccine, like our honorable Prime Minister continues to emphasize, is the only way out.
The next question is, in the event of antibody gets developed over time, post 2 jabs, whether there is a necessity to have the vaccine annually or biannually?
Yeah, and I just said, yeah, boosted jab is something which is ongoing, in our clinical studies. We hope to have a readout, sooner than later. Remember, otherwise, most manufacturers are reasonably confident that, at least for a year, the coverage should work from an antibody perspective, and there could be other things. But yes, not everybody responds to the vaccine the same way. We must remember, and that's one of the reasons you will have hypo responders also to vaccines. So you get people, and there are a lot of my physician friends who do antibody tests, and sometimes some of them don't have that. So that's another reason why we can't let go of our mask and our social distance practicing, even with vaccine in a large population like we have. Of course, long-acting antibodies, prophylaxis can help in that scenario, but those are still to be proven in real world. Those are still under clinical trial. So to the to just sum it up, I would say this is where the situation is, that we need to continue with these 2 doses and await the data on booster dose.
With the virus.
Prithvi,
Yeah,
Prithvi, 1 minute. Because Yeah, so we have questions coming by the dozen, and we can spend the
Yeah.
whole evening here. And
Yes,
I
yes,
don't
yes,
want to
keep coming.
retain Mr. Gagan Singh for that. We'll just take last two questions, and I am picking up one question from the chat box.
Okay,
So
sir.
our thought is important, and all of us would like to know is, Mr. Singh, this third wave and the impact on the children's, and what's your view whether vaccinations for children have come in, whether they have to be vaccinated quick and fast before the third wave, which is expected to come in September, from all the reports. What's your view on that?
Yeah, in an ideal world, you're absolutely right. If you had proven safety for children, we would all encourage our children to undergo vaccination. Unfortunately, the data is still not out, except in case of Pfizer, where sub 18 you do have data available. And like I mentioned, virus works on a host body mechanism, and if you don't have a large population like children attending schools or playing together, and they've not been vaccinated, even if one gets infected, that could be a potential infection spreader. So that's the real cause of concern. I completely agree, but I don't think we need to panic. There again, if we are prepared for the with the learnings that we've had from wave two, along with the social distancing and mask, it is manageable.
Yeah.
But it's not that
To add to that,
but
saying,
I must sorry, I must add, a lot of times people think that the mutant will go and attack children. That's not the case. Children will get it from people like us who care less, and then because they're not vaccinated, it will spread fast in that community. Sorry, I just wanted to add that for Siddharth.
yeah, I was echoing the same view. So it is so important for all adults who have been vaccinated or not yet to continue to have the COVID appropriate behavior, because we can give it to the children's. And that's incumbent on us. I think we are carrying a huge responsibility on our shoulders now to ensure that the children are safe. Prithvi, one last question, please.
You want me to pick up from the chat box, huh? Can we industry on how the vaccines are handled from manufacturing unit till it reaches the hospital or centers? That is, he's meaning how to refrigerate and what's the shelf life and transportation care.
Yeah, no, I think having said that, we were very fortunate because we started by supplying to a smaller population of healthcare workers. We did have time to build the entire supply chain together. That's been significant work. Fortunately for us, being adenovirovector, we do have storage not as requirements as severe as what mRNA vaccines have. So therefore, the existing supply chain could be well utilized. And I don't think we've lost time or vaccines have been impacted because of supply chain. And that's a great compliment to the logistics in the country. If there has ever been a bottleneck, it's been in the supply because the demand is so huge.
So one last question, sir. When do you
Yeah,
feel the prices in
yeah.
the private hospital will ease currently being offered between 850 and 1200 per dose?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I missed the
Yeah.
first.
When do you feel the prices in the private hospital will ease currently being offered between 850 and 1200 per dose?
Yeah, I mean, look again. It's a hard one to say because pricing is something which government has control all through on vaccines. Like I said, in my presentation, if you saw, for us, it's all about not-for-profit or equitable access. So we haven't really charged any profit till now and that's our stated position during the pandemic. But I think so it depends on the government. And alternatively, and this is just a normal thesis on economics, as you have more and more players come in and more supplies come in, there will naturally be competition for people to reduce their prices. Currently it is still demand which is outstripping supply. But once you start having equilibrium, my own thesis is that natural competition will make sure prices get more affordable.
Praveen
Yeah,
sir,
thank you, Mr. Singh. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gagan Singh, for patiently taking all those questions. As I said, there are dozens more. We will reach out to you with all the important questions our members have raised. And to our members, dear friends, for all those questions which were unanswered or untaken, apologies from my side. Its time is short, but we will try and get answers from Mr. Singh and reach out to you. Before we virtually honor you, sir, for having come and share your great wisdom with us, any last words from the President Parshuraman, and then over to you, Prithvi.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Praveen Iyer, and thank you, Mr. Gagan Singh, for a wonderful session. And as rightly said by Dr. Praveen Iyer, you answered the questions very patiently. And I think our members should be very, very happy, because this is one of the best sessions where we had a very good interaction with a very senior person from the industry. And especially, it's a time that the country is going through a huge change and shortage of vaccination. I think your session has really brought in a lot of wisdom, practical insight to our members. Once again, I'm very thankful to you and I hope to connect with you in the future. And I also invite Dr. Gagan Singh to our BCIC, as a special invitee or to advise us. So I'm requesting his advice to Bangalore Chambers in the days to come also. So we are also looking at a CEO panel we are trying to train. I think Shekhar is working on that. So we would like to invite you to be the secretary of that and look forward to our continued association. Once again, thank you very much. Wonderful evening. Once again, our sincere thanks from Bangalore Chambers. So as a token of our appreciation, small we will meet you in person very shortly.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you
So much. Thank
Before
you.
just before I go, deep sense of gratitude again, Parshuramanji, Praveen Iyerji, to you, and Divish, for inviting me here. And I must say, the awareness of audience is remarkable. Your questions really deep inside it. So thank you once again for inviting me here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you
a
so
lot.
much. It was such a pleasure.
Gagan,
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Praveen
Prithvi.
Iyer, and thank you,
vital
Thank
part
you.
of our paper,
Sir.
and we look forward to renewed participation by your company in the ultimately
Thank you so much, Devesh.
on
And
the
God bless, sir, in all your future initiatives. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you all.